All righty, folks, we are going to talk about some wishful thinking going on in the mortgage market. There is a chart, which I will show momentarily, that is interesting but incomplete. We talked about it today on the daily financial news. Dustin and Jonathan were good enough to go back and actually get the missing piece, AKA duration. But guys, we are going to talk about how soon mortgage rates could be 4.5%. Yes, folks, people really respected in the mortgage industry are trying to paint a picture that 4.5% mortgage rates are around the corner, which I think is a gigantic mistake. But hey, there are people paid to make these calls, and I'm seeing more and more people tell me 4.5% is coming. He said it's coming, and we believe him. We're going to talk with Dustin and Jonathan. Dustin, how you doing? You were on first today.
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for doing all the research. What you have pulled up is without question the missing piece. We will get that to that in a moment. But Jonathan, how you doing?
I'm all right. Trying to we're out here trying to weather the storm. We have umbrellas too. Right now with the rates coming.
Coming in hot.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Let's just touch on that real quick, because again, we talk every week, which I appreciate you. Thank you for doing that. Last week we talked before the jobs number came out on Thursday. It obviously came in hot. And I personally saw a move on Friday of 27 basis points, which is bananas for like a 4-hour window. And it's only continued all week. So just before we get into this chart that will show us 4.5% mortgage rates coming, what has it been the last week with mortgage rates up almost 0.5%? Jonathan,
John.
Yeah, I mean, rates jumping 0.5%. I mean, I've seen as much as 0.6% in some higher leverage situations, right? So, I mean, CPI came out today, which, I think kind of supports the Federal Reserve cutting a little slower and whatnot. But the market itself has already, and this is something that Dustin and I have been saying, it's already digested everything, right? The market's smarter than all of us. So when I think 2 weeks ago, right, or 3 weeks ago, we probably hit our floor, right? And in terms of where the market, and now we're in a situation where, okay, we hit the floor, the market, and it's crazy because I've had this conversation. People get mad at me. Clients get mad at me. And like not like existing clients, but new clients sometimes get mad at me and say, everyone's telling me rates are dropping. You're the only one telling me rates are going up. I've had that.
I firsthand heard that yesterday from John sitting next to him waiting for me and him to talk. And it was an interesting conversation.
It was crazy because they were trying to tell me that rates are down. You don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to work with someone that says rates are up when rates are down, because you obviously don't understand what the market's doing. And
this was a guy, put in perspective, John. You put him into process, like signed a loan application on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So that's why, right? The news that it takes for the consumer to get
So I feel for you, but let me be the consumer in this situation. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm the consumer. I do one loan every 8 years, whatever it is. I just got 15 emails from mortgage providers. Top of the rates cut, surprise move, 50 basis points, blah, 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 blah. Call me now. This, that, the other thing. And, I'm not going to say they're lying, because I guess technically correct, the Fed did cut, but those don't impact mortgages. And we have a lot of body shops, call centers that are starving, that are frankly trying to do bad loans. And that's the problem, is you guys don't want to do bad loans, and they will. That's the problem you're suffering.
So we're here, right? Rates actually did. And it's, again, if anyone looks at the treasury yields, any of the treasuries, you'll see like a sharp uphill that we haven't seen. It's literally, we haven't seen this uphill in a while. And people are going to see that. And, the correlation that they have to make, and what we're telling clients is rates are up, right? This is now what we thought was going to be lower rates for longer, or not what we thought, but like what we had hoped that people had hoped for, right? It's not, that's kind of already left. You have to just keep adapting with the market. But, we can keep talking about it, but the market is up. Like rates are up overall, and they're continuing to climb.
The question I had for you guys that I really wanted to understand, because this rates are up. So first and foremost, obviously it hurts new business. All right, you just told me uneducated consumers who don't know you from Adam are just stupid and ignorant. Got it. But I'm curious, when you look at the book of business heading into last week, I think you told me once that you were about 60-40 refis versus purchase. I am wondering, given this rate move, I'm wondering how much it impacts the refi business, because I think it was Lance Lambert from Resi Club put out a number pre this increase that, roughly speaking, 4 million people were in a positive environment where a refi made sense, roughly. He put out a post, I think, over the weekend going, with this increase, we've lost about 1 million people. So now it's 3 million in a good spot. And we may have lost some since then. So I'm curious if you guys saw the most impact on purchase or refi, or maybe the average consumer doesn't know and you saw no impact. Dustin?
Yeah, so I always bring this up because we are different. Convoy Home Loans operates in a different arena or space than the majority of the mortgage industry. And once again, the refis that we are doing, yes, you always, as the consumer, our clients, they always want the lowest rate possible, right? And we're always going to try and get them the lowest rate possible. But being that all of our clients are investors, 95% of them, right? They're coming to us to refi for a purpose. They're coming to us to refi to get out of a hard money loan, to get
they're going
cash
from
out to move
12
on to the
to
next
7
project.
or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, our refis are not your typical refis that Quicken or I won't name all the big
you're not
blocks
doing
are
rate and term streamlines.
Exactly. So that's why we, knock on wood, and why John and I are so happy to be where we are in owners, is that we wanted to cater to investors, not just to help the investor community as well, obviously,
but it's a focus and a competitive advantage. Yeah,
it's a competitive advantage for us, right? The dip in origination volume for the conventional conforming lenders has been significantly bigger than for John and my's book of business, and that's just something
I love that. And that's why Convoy Home Loans has a home on one rental at a time, because again, my channel predominantly is investors. So it makes perfect sense why this has been such a great relationship. All right, now for the money. We've got some folks out there painting a vision of 4.5% mortgage rates are coming. They have a chart, which I will share momentarily, that shows decent logic that 4.5% mortgage is possible given history. What I said the first time I saw this, what I said this morning, and what we are going to debunk right now, is there was no duration. Right? Is this something that's coming in the next 9 months and we could have 4.5% mortgage rates in 2025? Or is this something that might be a slow glide path to 2029? That is the conversation we're going to have right now. So Dustin, Jonathan, let me pull this up because I think it will really be valuable for folks. So hopefully you guys can see this. Yes?
Yep.
All right, so let me paint this vision. Again, David Rosenberg put this out. MBS Highway seconded it. But basically, folks, what you see on the left-hand column is the first rate cut back to 1984. It then has a column for what that rate cut was, quarter or 50. It talks about what the 10-year was at the moment of the Fed rate cut. It then highlights what happened to the 10-year note after the rate cut. I will admit, that column, the spike column, was very, very, very interesting to me. I did not expect that column. I did not expect 9 of the last 10 rate cutting cycles having the 10-year going up. I thought what we just went through was abnormal. It clearly is not. So let me stop there for a moment. There's a lot more coming, but when you looked at that chart, Jonathan, did that surprise you, that spike column?
Yes and no, just because we've been through, like Dustin and I have been in the game for a while, so we've seen kind of the cycles as they cut. Well, I've been in it since probably the 19 cut, which is, I started in 2015 or 16. So I saw these 19, 20, 24 ones happen. So we've lived through that, the effect of those. So in reality, it hasn't really affected me, like in terms of like, wow, what happened? Just because we've been in that, and I think it's kind of the same for Dustin.
Yeah. I will admit that this surprised me. If you were to put my gun to head before seeing this chart, I would have guessed 7, 8 out of 10 were down, and I was wrong. The market's gut reaction to the Fed rate cut is they're cutting for a reason, something's breaking, and the cost of capital goes up. It makes logical sense now that I look at it, but it would not, again, I'm just admitting where I was wrong. I would not have guessed 9 of 10 would have been up. So, okay, so that's that. Then it gets really, really, really interesting. Where does the peak go? Because again, the gut reaction is up, but how up? And as you can see here, the up is not really that large, right? I think the range is all the way up to 0.41. But again, the question I have here is duration. Now, this is probably very much weeks and months. And then it gets interesting. And this is the missing piece. And this is what Dustin was gracious enough to go out and do the research on, was how long did it take to get to the low? And why don't I just let Dustin jump in here, because you've gone back and collected the data very quickly. So I won't call it scientific, but you did go back and look at the charts, and I think your numbers are going to be pretty interesting. What'd you find out, Dustin?
Yeah, so I do want this chart, by the way, was put out by a very prominent figure in our industry, especially if you work in the mortgage industry, which is Barry Habib, and the MBS Highway, and he sells all of his marketing tools so that loan officers can educate their clients on where rates are at, right? And this was a chart. I made a funny joke to Michael before we went on, made by my cousin David Rosenberg, a prominent economist. But the missing piece when you see the chart is, okay, how long did it take to get from the peak to the low? And I like the way that the chart used relative percentage in terms of the dip, because what's important to note also before I get into the how long it took or the duration is, on average the 10 years, the spread's normally 180, right? Between the treasury and where mortgage rates are at. That's the average. Now, I didn't have that on here, but right now we're operating 240 to 250. Okay. Right. But the important part that I wanted to go through is like all the news and everybody that's saying we're going to hit 4.5%, right? It's on path. Well, one thing that I really wanted to touch on that I'm telling clients is, look, history does repeat itself. I'm never going to, argue that, but to what degree is always going to be a debate, because I'm here to say, and I haven't been here, for all 10 of these rate cuts, right, in 1984 when it started on this chart, but there hasn't been a 4-year period just like we have had from 2020 to 2024 that's going to be, capable or relatable and to a certain degree of the previous 9 rate cuts. So we need to take that into an account, okay? Number one. Number two, when I did this, and I'll read off the numbers, essentially the each rate cut that happened, the duration till it got to its low, right, on the 10-year, was at 24 months, the first one, then 9 months, then 52, then 40, then 30, then 60, then 16. Okay. And the average that I put out was like 30 months. But that's over the 9 rate cuts, right?
Yeah. So I just did the math, and the numbers you gave me were 25.6.
So 2 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. Duration.
That's the average.
Yeah. But it could be 5 years. It could be 5.
Exactly. There was a point where it was 5. Now, if you're going to tell me that it was the one that was 5 was actually the one from in 2007. Okay.
Okay. There you go. Okay.
That's more, you could say it's probably closer to what we've had in 2020 to 2024.
And which one was 9? What was that? 87 was 9?
87 was 9.
Okay.
So, take it with a grain of salt. Yes, we are. I'm not going to argue that the feds are in a rate cutting cycle, but the argument and why rates have moved so much, yes, job reports last Friday, but, well, how quick and how often are the feds going to start cutting? Because right now rates are up so much because, well, 2 weeks ago, we thought it was a guarantee half a point in November, quarter or half in December.
I even made that call. You're right. Yeah.
now we may not cut in November, December. I think there's still going to be a quarter, but there's now talks that there may not be another November or December rate cut. So I found the chart very interesting. It's just the news that we're getting that me and John have to compete against because other loan officers are saying, hey, 4.5% is on its way. Well, yes, this chart missed the duration part.
I'm so happy you brought this up because, again, I think I am with you. And I've been very clear. I do not see 4.5% mortgage rates in 2025. I do not see 4.5% mortgage rates in 2025. Could 4.5 become the cycle low? Sure. But I believe any cycle low, kind of to your point, Dustin, is it's not the average. It's not 25 months. It's probably on the outside. It's 60 months. It could be a new cycle long. It could be 72 months. We could be talking about 2030 before we see the cycle low at 4.5. Because again, we are in a very different world with a broken housing market, with $8 trillion in money still sloshing around the system. In my opinion, we are on a slow grind lower that will take years to play out. And if you are going to sit on the sidelines for 4.5, you might as well go to sleep until 2028 or 29 or 30. Do deals that make sense today at the cost of capital. And sometime in the future, if MBS Highway and Rosenberg Research are right, you'll refi at 4.5. But that's years from now. It's not soon. And I think that's the missing piece. Jonathan?
They have cryogenic chambers that I heard some billionaires are putting themselves into that you can freeze yourself to wait for things to happen. But we've been telling.
Can you imagine waiting for 4.5? I'm not going to do anything until it's 4.5. Okay, great. It's 2030. What are you doing?
It's arbitrary, right? At the end of the day, rates, like mortgage rates and just rates in general, interest rates, is kind of an arbitrary number because it's just, again, the mindset has to always be the cost of capital, right?
Yes.
It's just the cost of capital. And this is the conversation that Dustin and I have probably a million times a day, is it doesn't matter whether rates are up or down, because remember, everyone has a short-term memory for bad news, right? And if you remember just 2 years ago or a year ago, we were talking high 7, 8. We were touching 9, like that was just maybe 18 months ago, right? And that memory, people have already forgotten. They're like already brainwashed into, oh my gosh, now we should be expecting rates to be here. And we're like, hey, if your deals were working at 7, 8, 9, then just let it work in 5 and 6,
Yeah. Well, Dustin, let me play this scenario out for you, because I want people to see what waiting for 4.5. So again, I'm just going to say for a moment, interest rates are 4.5%, but it's 2030. Okay. I'm just going to make a declaration for this example. And you could be that buyer investor that keeps renting for the next 6 years and wait for that. We are going to have 6 years of inflation and all those things. So not a great idea, but you could wait for 4.5. Or you could do a deal today that makes sense today at 6.5. And then over the course of 6 years, again, depending on the loan balance, you probably could refi at 5.5, which would make financial sense. And then refi again at 4.5. Just do rate and term. And that would be more beneficial for you. Again, this is a chess game, folks. Mortgage rates don't fall to 4.5. Again, look at the chart. The shortest was 9 months, and that only fell like, I don't know, half a point. It's not happening in 9 months. So it's not happening in 2025. But Dustin, what do you think about that? Waiting till 2030 versus buy now, make sense now, refi a couple of times.
Yeah, and this is something, with your community, and then me and John actually practicing what we preach, where, look, if you're an investor, this is what you want. You want it to be you want this rate environment, right? You want to be able to go to, a seller that you're putting the listing on where they don't have any offers, and you're offering 10, 20% below market. And
buyer's market, baby. Buyer's market.
Right? Buyer's markets are not common.
No.
Not common at all. It's not And we've had one, you know, sure, there's been months of blips where it's turned to a seller's market for a month or so with the news that we had over the last 45 days. But if you're sitting on the sideline as somebody that's, you know, whether it is a primary residence that you're looking to buy or whether it's an investment property, you got to run the numbers because you can do the numbers yourself where, hey, let's just say subject property when rates are 4.5% in today's world may go for $1 million. But when it's at 6.5%, it's going for 875 because I negotiated a good deal. Now that 875 and the payment that I make over the next 2 years to get to 5.5, that delta, and then the next payment from 5.5 to 4.5, that delta before it gets to 4.5 is significantly lower, and you own way more.
And guess what happens to rent over 6 years? Come on, folks. Let's
up.
stop being stupid. Stop being dumb. Waiting for 4.5 in 2030. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I just remembered, and this is I say this now just because now I'm done. And Dustin, I'm going to talk about Serrano, but I like if the channel remembers, if you guys go back, I bought a house in Koreatown that was totally bad. I bought it for 164, and that was a higher rate environment, right?
Yep.
And I bought it assuming that I'm like, okay, well, hopefully over the next year, rates kind of trickle down and all that. It didn't really happen as far as we wanted it to, but properties kept selling. And because I bought it for 164, I got the appraisal back and we just funded, but it came back at 2.8. So like the deals that
hold on. How much money did you put in? So you bought it for 1.6. How much you put in?
I put 1.6 and then I put in 350.
So let's call it, okay, so you're at 2 million. You got an appraisal back at what?
2.8.
Dude, why do you do loans? You're not a loan business. You just do real estate. You just made 800 grand.
Yeah, but what I'm trying
I'm kidding, Dustin. That was a joke.
Yeah, this is
it's
what's crazy. It does. We're trying to get more into that, but the realization is like I'm telling clients like, hey, I'm doing exactly what I'm telling you guys to do.
That's why you're here.
And when you do that right successfully, it doesn't matter whether the market is down or whether the market seems to be up. If you do the work and do the good deals, right, it'll come to fruition and you're going to be able, it doesn't matter whether the rates are 7 or 6 or 5. I refied at like 7, I think, flat. And it's like it didn't matter because the equity's there. So now it's like everyone has to do a little bit of that extra work to do the value add. And if you do it, your appraisal is going to come in higher. You're going to build that equity in.
Yeah. Guys, you know what, folks? I want to get these guys in our school community. Let me know in the comments below if you would love to do a 1-hour session, just Dustin and Jonathan inside school, where you can ask them questions, ask them about loan products, ask them about being investors. Also, don't forget, they will be in Vegas at our Vegas event, February 15th and 16th. They will be talking on the lender panel. Guys, if they wanted to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Go to convoyhomeloans.com and let us know you came from ORAT.
You have to tell them you came from ORAT, because if you don't, you go in the queue. If you say ORAT, you get one of these two fine gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.